Okay, hi everyone. So it's 1:03 and I'm going to call the Neary Building Committee Finance Subcommittee to order. Then I'm also going to call the Select Board meeting to order because we also have a quorum, assuming Marguerite is in the audience still. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yep.
Okay, so we've got 3 out of 5. Jason, you want to call Neary Building Committee to order?
I will call the Neary Building Committee to order at 1:04 p.m. And Kathy, I will note I may drop off at some point. I'll just message Denise when that happens. You'll still have a quorum, but in case you have to do a roll call to adjourn.
Okay. And we're watching school committee. If Roger joins, then they've got a quorum too. So we're going to watch for him if he's coming. All right. So I think we've gotten that out of the way. So everybody be patient for a second. We just got to get some administrative stuff out of the way first. Okay. So first thing is to approve the minutes from June 26th. Mark, I just sent them a few minutes ago. Did you have a chance to look at them?
Nope.
They're very straightforward. So I read them. Andrew?
I read them. I saw the same where they just need to put an S for Mark's name.
Yeah. So the only change that I note is on the second page under paragraph 5, where the paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth paragraph, Mark Davis, it says his last name spelled wrong, Davis, and that's it. Mark, are you okay if we go ahead and approve these?
Yes.
That's all I had too, so I think we're in sync.
All right. So Andrew, you'll make the motion.
I move that we approve the 6/26/24 minutes as amended.
Second.
Second, roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Kathy's aye. So those are approved. Okay, on to the invoice packages. So we've got one from June and then the normal July invoices. So has everyone taken a look at the June Arrow Street invoice, which is its normal pro rata piece, okay? Same thing for July. Skanska did not issue an invoice in June, but they do have their July one. And then there's 2 small ones, Jim, that I don't think we got invoices for. I mean, $44 from GoDaddy, and I don't know what Kimsta
is. I believe they were both website related. So we do have the backup, so I can get that to you.
Fine. You've looked at them, they're okay, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're okay recommending approval.
Okay. All right. Andrew, any questions on any of them?
No.
Mark?
Nope.
Okay, so let's start with the June invoice. So Andrew, you want to read them off as far as the numbers go and approve them one at a time?
Sure. I move that we approve the Arrow Street invoice number 729,620 in the amount of $34,440.
Second.
Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Cook is aye. So 3-0. Okay, keep going.
Okay. I move that we approve the Arrow Street invoice number 729,652 in the amount of $58,888.24.
Mark, you want to do the seconding?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Cook is aye. 3-0 on that one. Keep going.
I move that we approve the Skanska USA building invoice dated 8/2/24 in the amount of $16,540.
Second.
Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And Cook is aye. 3-0. Keep going.
I move we approve the Kinsta invoice dated 3/5/2024 for $350.
Second.
Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Cook is aye.
And I move we approve the GoDaddy invoice from 3/5/2024 in the amount of $44.53.
Second.
Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Cook is aye. Okay, so Jim, Becky, all invoices are approved through the end of July. And we still have about $5,000 that has not been committed as far as the $950,000 warrant article for feasibility and schematic design. Okay with that? Yeah. Okay. So the way we're going to do this with this crowd that we've got that we're not used to is for those that are on the full building committee, not on a subcommittee, and for those on the select board, Sam, let the subcommittee do their discussion first, and then we will absolutely entertain questions, comments, whatever you want to do, because we do want your input. We're going to decide today what the presentation is going to look like that this subcommittee is going to do at the Monday night main meeting of the full building committee. So that's the purpose of this meeting, is to get ready for that meeting, so that the vote that is expected to take place on Monday has as much information as possible as far as the current projected cost of the 3 scenarios. Jason, anything you want to add to that before we get going?
Nothing to add.
Okay, so to tee this up, we have new estimates that were done by the estimators that Arrow Street uses, that have been provided for all 3 scenarios, B4, C1, and C4. The good news is all 3 have come down, and I would think that the word is significant, materially. So they have been reduced for a variety of reasons, not just one reason. There's a variety of things that went into the reduction. Skanska has taken the construction cost and to that added all the other projected costs. So we've got a nice spreadsheet that is the one sanctioned by the MSBA. It's called Form 3011, that they have completed for all 3 scenarios that factor in all cost and have also computed what we believe is our current effective MSBA reimbursement rate. All right, so far so good. We have then taken those final town projected cost after the MSBA reimbursement has been subtracted, and ask our town treasurer to work with our bond consultants to help us figure out what the impact of the new costs would be on the town budget for the next 5 years. So Brian's done that starting with fiscal year 26. He's done 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So we're going to pop that on the screen in a few minutes, but we're going to go through some of the details first before we get to that. So therefore, Monday night, when everyone starts trying to figure out what they want to vote for, they at least understand the full impact of the project as we know it today on the town budget. So it's not an isolated number. We've got the isolated numbers if somebody wants those, but it's how it factors into the overall projected town budget for the next 5 years. So far, so good. All right, so let's start with the estimates that have been done by the estimators. And Jim, have you got those popped up on your screen?
I do.
Okay. So you want to walk us through B4, C1, C4 as far as the estimates? And before, let me add one more explanation before he does that. The estimator gave us 2 sets of numbers for each scenario. So we have basically 6 sets of numbers. And the 2 sets of numbers per type of project depend on the type of contract that we enter into. Jason and I are used to one type of contract, which is the first one. The MSBA currently prefers the second one, which is called the CMR. We're not going to get into today an in-depth discussion of the 2 different contracts, but I'm going to talk about them a little bit. So I've spent a whole lot of time in the last 2 days talking to Jim, talking to the MSBA, reading. The MSBA actually has a white paper on the 2 types of contracts. So if we were to enter into the CMR, it would be a much different type of contract than when Jason and I were part of when we did the last big building project, which was the public safety building. And the overarching reason for the MSBA preferring the CMR is that school projects seem to be much more complicated than possibly other municipal projects. And the risk, therefore, of signing the type of contract that the town did for the public safety building is enhanced. And therefore, the CMR takes some of that risk out of it as far as design changes, change orders, et cetera. Jim understands this very well. So when we get to a later full building committee, I'm sure he's going to explain both of these in great detail. He understands it really well and can explain it so that I think we can all understand it. But that's why you've got 2 sets of numbers on those projections. The numbers that we have used so far as what Brian has used, is the higher of the 2, based on Skanska's recommendation. So we've used the contract version, the CMR, Construction Manager with Risk. So that's the numbers that have been used. So we've used the higher of the 2. The difference in the 2 is 5%. And there's a reason for that. The 5 was not arbitrary. There's a way they built up to the 5. So we've used the higher of the 2 to be conservative. And also because it looks like it's more likely than not that that will probably end up the type of contract that we choose. So far, so good. Okay, so Jim, why don't you walk us through the 3 actual estimator numbers, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is our overall summary for, as Kathy mentioned, the B4, which is the 610 enrollment ad reno, the C1, which is the new, the 305 enrollment, 2 grade, and the C4, which is the 610 4 grade enrollment. So as Kathy mentioned, we plugged this in to get to a total project cost. So the total project cost includes the hard costs, the estimates, plus all soft costs. So the estimated construction costs are the estimates that Kathy is referring to. So for the B4, the ad reno 610, we were in roughly 90 million. For the C1, which is the 305 new building, was 67 million. The C4 610 enrollment new building was 92. And again, with rounding. So these are the
Jim, go back to that screen for just a second. I just want to.
Sure.
Okay, now put your cursor on the estimated town share for a second at the bottom.
Yep.
Right there. Okay, the reason that the 2 610 schools are different in the end, even though they start out with basically the same number, is a couple reasons. But one of the main reasons is the MSBA does give you incentive points if you renovate, which you won't get with a new school. So that's why the net cost is a little bit different at the bottom, and even though it starts out at the same number. And then the projections that Brian ran were, if you go to C1, he ran it as a town share of 65 million. So we rounded up there. And then for the C4, he ran it at 86 million. So we probably should have done 85. We're going to redo this before Monday night to have a more accurate number, because there's some other changes we're going to make before then, which we'll go over in a minute. But that's what you're going to see today is 86 million for town share for C4 and 65 for C1. And we didn't bother doing anything different with B4 because B4 and C4's cost is so close. So there was no reason to do a third one. So we just did 2, 65 million and 86. Okay, back to you, Jim.
Yep. Yeah, so primarily for the town share, as Kathy mentioned, you get additional incentive points on top of your reimbursement rate for the percentage that you are reusing the existing building. So yeah, as far as the estimates go, we reviewed those internally, and I know there was a couple of questions that went back and forth. So all of these estimates, I think the key factor here is that this is a snapshot in time, and we are estimating based off square footages, based off all the information that we have for the existing conditions on the site. And those are the numbers that we're currently showing, and that's the information that the estimator used in order to come up with these estimated construction costs. So are there any specific questions on how this is laid out or the estimates themselves?
No, I mean, I think Jimmy, I sent Jim a couple questions, Mark, Kathy, just so you know, on kind of mostly around the site. Like if you look at option C1 there, it looks like the roadway around the school is smaller and the parking lots are smaller. But in the data, the parking lots are actually bigger in C1 than they are in C4. Also, I think the overall site might still include the fields. So, I asked them to check with the estimator on those ones, but that was just my only real constructive feedback is to double check the site improvements, because they were basically the same from C1 to C4. In fact, C1 was actually higher in some things than C4 when it came to the site. So I think, just fine tuning that and double checking the numbers.
Yeah. And go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
I was just going to give a super quick response. The easy one to answer, Andrew, is about the extents. We did remove the fields from the limit of work. So that is out. We sent a diagram actually to the estimator to outline the extents of it. And that's the same on all three of them because there will be a certain amount of moving dirt around and things in preparation for paving. So the limit of work is removing the fields, and it's the same for all three. Just
So
because
you've done that recently, Katie?
that was in the information that we sent to the estimator.
And do
Okay,
you
so
have a map of that you
Mhm.
could show just to see? I just want to see like if I did the existing basically from on the existing school, the pavement area around it, including the playground up to the roadway, and I got like 285,000.
Well,
Jim, if you can zoom in on those, one of the key plans, you see a light gray dotted line. Just zoom in on any of those. You can see the limit of work line, which we
Okay, so I think you're including the field, which I wasn't including.
yeah.
yeah,
Jim,
we're including the
you
field down
can't
at the
zoom in
bottom.
on that because we could pull it up on a separate
Yeah,
screen
yeah.
if it's helpful.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I was
There
Yeah,
you
yeah.
go. Okay.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
then
Okay, so I think it was the bottom part. I wasn't including that kind of soccer field down there.
right. And this is, as Katie's mentioning, is following, some of it's following the outline of the existing paving, which although might not be part of the finished product, is going to be part of the site work when you take up that paving and prep it for becoming grass or
Okay.
something else.
Yeah, if you could just send me the actual map that you sent just to make
Sure.
me feel better, that'd be great.
Should have been in all the drawings, but we can resend.
I tell you what looks a little strange, desktop level view, is that the site cost for both C1, C4 are basically the same, $10.5 million, 10.3, 10.5, which is what makes you look further, right? So, Andrew, do you want them to look further and just make sure they've gone through these? Because they just look, then you go line by line, you look at things and say, how can the 305 not be less than the 610? Lighting.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you even just look at the paving quote from the estimator, they have C1 at 107,000 square feet of paving and C4 at 78,000, right? And even if we just look at these images right here, I would, just looking at it, I would say that it looks like C4 has more parking spots and pavement than C1 would.
So I'll also add, the images you're seeing are the ones that we're going to present tonight to the NBC. That we have advanced the designs. One of the meetings that we had this week was talking to our traffic consultant, and I was emailing Keith Lavoie confirming numbers of staff and some things like that. So even since the information that the estimator was sent to now, we've refined the driving aisles, the number of parking spaces. So those could be refined numbers in the estimate before we give a final number, but I think they're really going to be nips and tucks. It's going to be, a little bit here and a little bit there. Agreed that the different scenarios would have different sizes, but again, these are really just broad number estimates.
Yeah, I mean, but they're based upon, I mean, in the estimates based upon a square foot, right? And that
right.
C1 has significantly more pavement than C4.
Yeah, again, I think we fine-tuned that from the version that was sent to the estimator because it was still we hadn't gotten the input yet from our traffic engineer. Okay. So I could ask him to look at these ones and take off new numbers if that's
yeah, I mean, it looks like it's based upon square footage and a unit cost, right? So if C1 is actually 60,000 square foot of pavement and C4 is 70 or something similar, I would imagine C1 is smaller, which it looks like on this drawing. I think just having him rerun that number would be advantageous because right now it looks but C1 is inflated by using those numbers.
Andrew, are you hoping, excuse me, are you hoping that that happens before Monday evening's meeting with the NBC?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to run a new set of numbers because of a couple of reasons on Monday morning. And so, yes, we've got time to incorporate a refined number for Monday night's presentation.
Okay. I'm not sure how much time our estimator has, but we will check with them to see what's available. Yes, that.
I mean,
that is a moving piece.
I have it in a spreadsheet, so you give me the new square footages, I can run the unit cost.
That's okay. Better to have our estimator run the numbers.
Yeah, but it's it doesn't seem like it's a very complicated calculation they're doing.
Okay, Jim, back to you.
Yep. Oh, okay, so if it's okay, moving on from the estimate, unless there was any other questions on the estimate, I was going to talk through some of the items that are in soft costs.
Well, let's hold on. So let's get
Okay.
a big picture. Let's talk about how much this has changed from what we saw the first time with the PDP. Okay, so if you look at C1 and C4, the original estimate for C1 was 105 to 109. It's now 83. So it's come down 17 and 9. If you take the bigger number, $26 million. So, 25%, that's a lot. Same things happened to C4. So that's the magnitude of change from what was in the PDP. So it's a lot. And it's again, a combination of reasons. Square footage being reduced, actually computing our effective MSBA reimbursement rate, actually looking at soft costs and seeing what percentage that is. We started with 25, that's down to 22. So many factors have caused this, but it has come down a lot in the right direction, which is good. Okay.
Yeah,
Jim.
definitely. Yeah, and as the process goes on, as we gather more information, we're able to, focus in on that, what that dollar value is when you have less unknowns. So yeah, definitely understanding logistics of the students being able to be off-site, that dialed in our swing space costs and some of our phasing costs. So yeah, all drivers for that number heading in the right direction.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so anything else on the numbers themselves? Like I said, I can give a little bit more information as to what's in the soft costs. So that's just from estimated total project costs to estimated construction costs. Kathy, if you think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, Mark Davis. Mark, do you have any comment on the site costs, et cetera, in the estimates?
I was just flubbing around trying to find in one of the detailed estimates, and I can't find it now. There still was a removal down 5 feet of fill, and I couldn't understand why it was still there. And I think it was in one of the C proposals because it wasn't in the second C proposal, and I just couldn't figure it out. If you can't find it, I'll look for it during the meeting.
No, it's definitely there. And there's a certain amount of fill they've carried, some of which is because the buildings don't fit precisely on the existing footprint. And some of it is allowing for the fact that when we pull up the foundations of the existing building, we've got to come back with new soil in order to then build the new building on top of it.
All right,
so not unexpected, but it did come down dramatically from what was in the PDP.
Yeah, when I saw that, you're basically assuming that everything under the current foundation is okay. And there it is. That's the 5 foot. And I figured it is probably the new construction that's outside the foundation. You're assuming it's bad fill. Am I correct?
Right. And again, some of these are rough estimates that have to be fine-tuned in the next phase of the work, which is the schematic design.
Correct. Okay.
And were we able to get the soil samples done around the existing school?
Not yet.
They're scheduled.
Okay.
They're scheduled for the end of the month.
Okay, cool.
End of month?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so Jim, where I think you need to go next is where you were heading, which is now build the soft cost in so we can get to total projected cost.
Yep.
And the
3011
3011 is a great spreadsheet, but that's busy. So yeah, I would do this one and not the 3011 yet.
Yeah, definitely.
Jim, just one quick question on the estimate that I wanted to double check is there's a hazardous materials line, and then there's a water line asbestos abatement.
Correct.
Are those double counting or are those actually different?
Those are different in that the hazardous material is the stuff in the building.
Okay.
And then we added for transite pipe removal, which is asbestos cement piping, which is in the site work, but nevertheless
Okay.
has to be handled and abated separately than the what happens in the building.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't double count. Thank you.
Yep.
But just a general question. On all three of them, you have a 6% escalation to the start date. I assume the start date is 2 years out from now. Is that roughly what we're looking at, 3% per year?
Yeah,
Not
if I
quite 2
recall
years.
correctly, we've got it from to June of 26 as the start date.
Okay. We're
Yep.
roughly
Right.
there.
Yeah.
What about the theory that construction costs are incredibly high right now, and that if what I'm assuming will happen is they'll come back to reality in the next couple of years, doesn't that 6% just disappear?
We don't like it to. What
It, it, it
what I
will
would
fall out when you do the bidding. So it's got, I agree it should be there for now because we don't know that's going to happen. But when you actually have the schematic done and the construction docs done and you're ready to bid, it will fall out if that's what's happened. But let me just add this. I was going to do this later, but I'll do it now because I think it's relevant. So the MSBA voted last fall to increase their cap on their reimbursable per square foot amount from high 300s to 550 per square foot. They increased the amount that they reimburse for site costs to $55 a square foot. That's why people keep saying 10%. It's really $55, which is 10% of 550. They also voted, and this is in the law, they added more money to the MSBA pot. They took out accelerated repairs from the cap, so there's more room for our new schools. But they also increase the amount that they can increase at 550 each year from 4.5% to 6.5%. So the question I've been trying to get answered the last couple of days, and I still don't have an answer because I don't think the people I'm talking to quite understood my question. Jim knows I've got this question, which is, since they're probably going to vote again in the fall to increase 550 by maybe 6.5%, which is another 30 something dollars for us, does that mean that we'll get to use, instead of 550, 580? The 39.84% base gross reimbursement rate, that's fixed. We know that. But since the purpose of that increase is to reflect inflation, I don't know why we wouldn't be able to take advantage of that because our contracts aren't signed. Katie and Larry are just in the, starting their schematic at that point. So I'm hoping that 550 goes to 585 or 590, which will give us another $3 or $4 million on both projects. So I'm not worried about that 6% being there. It actually seems reasonable to me, given what we see with inflation. It's basically they're saying it's high threes per year by doing that. But it's going to fall out in the end anyway. We don't keep that in there, except when you're doing your projection. So I think it's okay. It should be in there for now, but it will come out once we actually have all the drawings done and the bids out.
And
Kathy, if I could clarify the MSBA, the way I understand their process, they will fix the rate when you go through their project scope and budget agreement, which should be after town meeting in the fall or in preparation for town meeting not the fall, in April.
Right.
Or May. It's at that point, they would say, okay, whatever the reimbursement rate is that's acknowledged in their system, that's what you qualify. And if it changes later, as far as I understand, you would not be eligible for that adjustment, even though your bids may come in where they come in.
Yeah, once we have
agree
that,
with you, Larry. That's common sense, right? And
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But I think they're going to vote again in the fall, so we should be able to take advantage of what that vote is if they increase at 550. And I'm not talking about the 39.84% town reimbursement rate, which is what the two ladies I talked to at MSB kept thinking I was talking about. I said, no, I know that's fixed. That's done. So anyway, they're going to get back to me, Larry, and answer the question. I think they finally understood what I was asking. So I'm just hoping. But right now we're sticking with the 550 and the 55, but we might get more than what Jim's going to show you he's projected in a second.
Okay. And just if I could answer Mark's question, construction escalation, what we are hearing from contractors is that the rate of escalation is leveling off. Previously, it was continuing to go up. They typically, when you talk to folks, don't anticipate a lot of movement coming downwards, shy of having a substantial recession that would push everybody down. And a lot of that is fixed contracts that are in the labor side that are very hard to claw back, as it were, from the cost per hour of labor. And then some of it's built into the materials costs, which can fluctuate a little more, but it's also driven by, cost of steel across the country kind of thing. So, in general, they're saying, yeah, it's leveling off, but nobody yet is saying, oh, it's going to come down. I think where you may see some more movement in the bids themselves is if somebody's feeling hungry because they need the work. And that's going to really depend on, where things are at bid time.
Yeah, and this is in line. We did review this internally with Skanska nationally, and it's in line with what we're doing as a corporation as well, with what we're projecting. Obviously, we have a pretty good historical data, and just to echo what Larry said, just to back up what Larry said.
Yep, and the one other thing I'll mention, because this sometimes comes up, is the way our estimator, PM plus E, estimates is to the start of construction. Some folks try to track it out to the midpoint of construction, but the way they track their ongoing watching the market is by looking at bids as they come in the door. So they're taking that as the sort of, we're going to go to start of construction, and then they escalate to get from whenever the estimate is produced to start of construction.
Okay.
And I still think the most important point is that it's in both. And one of the things we're trying to do is provide knowledge of the relative difference in cost between the two. So as long as we're doing the same thing on both sides, I still think we get to the right relative answer as far as the difference between C1 and C4.
That's 100% correct, Kathy. Yeah, comparative estimates, so that we're dialing them in as much as we can, but really it's the order of magnitude between a 2-grade and a 4-grade, a reno and a new building. So yeah, 100% agree with that. Okay, I'll run through some soft cost calculations. Okay, so this is a summary of the 3011 that Kathy had mentioned, which is basically how MSBA calculates their grant. So these are all the categories that are included within there. I won't run through all of them. We carry some money for legal fees, for Skanska OPM fees. We're carrying that at 3.5%. Architect and engineer fees, so that's 9.5%. And that's both of those are within, they cap those percentages. So those are both within those caps. We did get some input for hazardous materials. So that's the abatement of the building. So those numbers are reflected as well. We did carry geotech, geoenvironmental, and site survey. Those we went off some historical data from other projects. You have, and to Kathy's point, the CM at risk, we're carrying money for pre-construction services. We did also within the soft costs is the utility company fees, testing services. So that's third-party testing as you go through the project. So that's concrete testing, concrete breaks, steel, your envelope, all of that goes along. The swing space modulars. So as we went through the process, understanding what needed to be done for moving the students off site, we understand there's going to need to be 2 modulars at the Finn and Woodward sites. We reached out to a supplier, modular supplier, to get this cost. So that's input from an outside supplier. And now that we understand the logistics of that move, that'll be one move out, one move in. We were able to get some data on that as well from a move manager and mover. So that's that. So that's that cost. So we have FF&E. So that's all your furniture, equipment in the building. We reviewed with Aero Street's FF&E consultant to see what those costs are currently looking like for an average project, which is working out to $2,000 a student. Technology, we did the same with the tech consultant, and that is $1,800 a student. So notable here, and this is reflected in the numbers for the town share, MSBA reimburses up to $1,200 a student. So that grant is being decreased somewhat by us being over that $1,200. So we're starting at a point that is basically, we asked our FF&E and technology consultants, what dollar value are you seeing to really be able to give the district everything that they need without too much reuse? So we're carrying those numbers for now. Definitely further discussion on those. Construction and owner's contingency. So construction contingency is related to the actual construction. They call it owner's contingencies. That's more of a soft cost contingency. So if in one of these lines we need to move money, we would use the owner's contingency. The construction budget, if there was a change order in that line, we'd use the construction contingency. So right now we're on the B4 option. So under construction contingency, we're carrying 5%. And owner's contingency for soft cost, we're carrying 1.5. Construction contingency on the ad reno, which is the B4 option that I'm on right now, we are carrying 5%. On the new options, we're carrying 2.5%. So it's slightly less on the new options because obviously there's less unknowns.
And so, Tim, if I were looking at this for the first time and we're looking at the estimates, I'd say, well, wait a minute, you've already got 15% built in the estimate. Can you clarify why the 15% is needed and separate from what we're seeing here with the 5 and the 1.5?
Yep. So let me just pull up what Kathy's talking about. So yeah, going to the B4. So we have a design and pricing contingency. Right now it's at 15% for the B4 option, $8.9 million. So we don't have scope that is defined. We don't know lineal feet of duct. There's a lot of information that we don't know. So this design and pricing contingency is as we go through the design and that detail gets added in, we will draw down on this. So at the end of schematic design, you won't be able to decrease it as much, but as we go through detailed design, we'll be able to continue to decrease that. So it's covering the unknown scope that we have, and that we're basically covering that scope with a percentage. Now, this estimator does school projects across the state, and this is definitely, I went through some older estimates and some other estimates. This is about what you carry at this stage and this detail of design. So Katie, Larry, I know this kind of goes into your realm as well. Anything to add on that?
The only thing I would say is, to Jim's point, it basically goes to 0 at bid time. And then the owner's contingency, which Jim is carrying in the soft costs, is to cover things that come up during construction.
Thank you.
That's very clear. That's helpful. So Jim Burrows has been very patient with me the last few days. He's fielded a lot of phone calls. So I pushed back pretty hard on this, and he said, so what he's saying is, don't think you're going to save 15%. That's going to get used as Katie and Larry designed. So he made the statement that he thinks a lot of it's going to get used, maybe all of it. So therefore, don't confuse that 15 with the 5 and the 1.5 he just showed you, or the 2.5 and the 1.5 he's going to show you on the other two. Totally separate.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a great point. So these numbers for construction contingency, if we go through the project, we do well, and we only use 4 million of it, and we have $497,000 remaining. You don't have to borrow that money. You don't have to use that money. the design and pricing contingency will continue to draw down, and more likely than not that'll get drawn down to zero. So, yep.
So Jim, I was looking at the MSBA data that they have, like for basically at schematic design. And so basically, just to make sure I understand this, so like most of the average is about 10% at that point in time. So we're basically estimating that right, for now, we're going to carry 15. Then when we get through schematic, we'll probably eat into that as we go through the design, and maybe we end up at, kind of that average of 10, and then we'll eat into that as the project goes along as well.
Exactly. So,
okay.
And just so everybody knows, we do a schematic design estimate at the end of schematic. That gets turned over to the town. We have the town vote, successful vote, we go forward. During detailed design, we have multiple estimates as well. So we will have a design development estimate. So again, we'll reevaluate the design and pricing, see where we are, reduce that down. And then you have 60% construction documents. So we'll do another assessment then, reduce that down. And then you have 90% construction documents, reduce it down. And then the 100%. The 100% go out for pricing. So there might be that's the design and pricing contingency. So when the bids come back, if we want to leave a little bit of a buffer there, if there's any remaining after those steps, then we will. So, yep. Is that clear?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah,
okay.
Jim, if I could just mention, it's probably a little different on the design and pricing contingency than you think of for your owner's contingency. Owner's contingency, you think of, okay, I'm going to keep that money in my pocket and hopefully not spend it. Design contingency is basically saying, the estimator is saying to us, I think your project's going to cost about that much. And what he's doing is saying, I can count this much stuff in the drawings, and I'm going to add some because I know that I don't know everything. And that's the number that I think your project's going to cost. So it's not necessarily like you're saying, oh, I'll spend it as I need it. It's more like this is where he thinks the estimate where the bids are going to come in down the road. And we'll, again, as Jim points out, we'll be redoing this at the end of schematic and then several times during detailed design and final design.
Yep. Okay. And these numbers at the bottom just reflect what was shown on the previous slide. So I'll just note that the effective rate for the B4 renovation option, we're currently at 28.68%. So I know there's some folks on here. So we have our reimbursement with the state. And then they take out everything that is non-reimbursable, and that's how you get to your effective rate. So when we say effective rate, it's just basically your reimbursement rate less all your non-reimbursable.
And we're going to talk about the reimbursement rate in just a second, so I don't want to do that yet. But
okay.
Jim, I think, so if you just focus on cell D12, right, which is straight from the estimator, and again, that's the one on the right, the higher one, the CMR. In that one, can you also explain what the contingency is built into that number?
Sure. So as part of a CM at risk guaranteed maximum price, within that value, as part of that contract model, we have a GMP contingency. So this value includes a percentage of contingency within the construction value. So that is for unknown scope. It covers, a variety of items that aren't necessarily known at the time of bid. So again, it's just that contractual setup.
And if it turns out we do choose the CMR route and he doesn't need any of that 5%, we keep it, correct?
Correct. Any monies that they carry in their GMP that they don't use, it comes back to the owner, to the district.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. I will run through. Yeah, so all the same data. This is the C1 option, the 2 grade 305. I'm not going to run through all the categories. These percentages are the same, except for the construction contingency. As I stated before, we're carrying a 2.5%. And so the effective rate on the C1 option, the 305 is 22%. So slightly lower because we aren't getting those big driver, that is, we're not getting the additional points for the reuse and reno of the existing building.
So we originally had used in the PDP 18 with that number. And then if you go put your cursor on cell D23, E23, where the soft cost percentage down here.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
So that we had 25. So again, that's two factors that have caused the cost to come down with what we're looking at today.
Yep, definitely.
And that's at 3 incentive points, right?
Correct. Thank you.
Which we're going to discuss.
Yep. Yeah. So all of these include the incentive points that we're projecting. Okay. And then, so this is the C4 610 4-grade option. We are carrying all the same percentages, the 2.5%, and an effective rate of 25.29, and soft cost rate of 22.53. So any questions on any of the soft cost categories?
What was the effective rate on C1?
C1 was 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between the two?
So the difference between those is it's the soft costs definitely drive into it because it's an efficiency of the size of the building. You're still having to carry most of the same soft costs with a smaller building, so your cost per square foot is slightly higher. So that overall is coming down. So that's a big driver. It's definitely economy of scale. A bigger building has more efficiency. As we've looked at from a cost per student all the way to, just the running the projects, because you have a lot of those same baseline costs for a smaller school.
The other thing to point out on cell E22, Jim has included the $950,000, and that's what he's included on the 3011. He's included the 950 that was approved for the schematic and feasibility study. So that's the total cost of the town.
So so that's a key point, because when you get down to this is the big spreadsheet, the total project costs. If you were to just look at that on the 3011, it's going to be $950,000 more than the construction budget plus that. So so that's what, in the eyes of the MSBA, the total project cost includes feasibility.
Okay. All right. So Jim, anything else you want to say at this point? Because if not, we'll go to the overall town projections.
Nope, that's all I had.
All right. So again, Brian Ballantyne, in conjunction with our bond consulting firm, has run projections of what the town finances should look like for the next 5 years, fiscal year 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30, incorporating both C1 and C4, using $65 million as the final bond amount for C1 and $86 million for the final bond amount for C4. And the reason we didn't do B4 is because B4's cost was so close. Basically, the 86 is the same thing for B4. So 86 is B4, C4, and 65 is C1. Makes sense to everybody? Okay, so Brian, where are you? Are you at a place that you can share this, or do you want me to do it? Is Brian still here? Maybe not.
No, I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Do you want me to do it, or can you do it?
Probably be quicker if you have it up.
I got it up. Okay, so Andrew, are you going to let me share my screen?
Should be able to, your co-host.
Okay. No one can see this yet, right?
No, we don't see your screen.
Okay, now we go. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So for those in this meeting that are part of the annual budget process, you're going to know exactly what this is. This is what we finally call RevCap. So this is how Brian tracks our budget every year, and this is where we make our changes, and this is what is where we end up with as far as understanding the tax impact of the proposed budget. So you can see at the top, he's got fiscal year 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So Brian, you did this, so I don't want to steal your thunder here. So you want to walk us through what you did here?
Sure. So basically, we took the town budget, and this is our total budget that, as Kathy mentioned, we do every year. It's the detail, but we broke it down into 5 years and did a bunch of estimates that I won't go through because they're a little different for every category. But the town budget, school's budget, and the debt we have, the capital plan that we have as of today. So again, as was mentioned earlier, it's a snapshot in time, but this is all our various categories of the town budget. So we just drew that out 5 years based on certain projections, and then added the you can see I have specific lines for the Neary debt payment on the amortization schedules that we'll be paying back over the course of, right now this is based on a 30-year schedule. At the time we do these projects, we may lower it to 25, we may lower it to 20. Not sure, that kind of comes a little later, but we did it as a 30-year note. So that's what that's based on. And you can see on the right that the boxes, it's a little harder to see, but it's just year-over-year increases for tax bills. Obviously, it's a large project, and as some of you know, Southborough is very reliant on residential real estate taxes. So you can see that the project does affect the residential rate as you get into fiscal 26 and 27 and 28 quite a bit before it levels off. So
we're looking at C4, just to be clear. This is the bigger project. This is the $86 million of debt so far. We'll flip down. So 4.04 is the current year. So it has nothing to do with the project. That's what the current increase is in taxes for fiscal year 25, the year we're in right now. Then from that point on, the next 5 do reflect the debt that's going to be issued to fund the construction.
Correct. And yes, so as you can see, it kind of levels off at some point, and then based on other factors, it starts going down, and that could be a bunch of factors. We have debt drop off, we have capital that swings up and down a little bit. So there's a bunch of factors that factor into those boxes. It's not just the Neary debt. So just keep that in mind, that lots of other things are happening in the town that can affect those numbers. But that's where the 5 years stand right now.
Well, once it gets up, it stays up, but once it's there, and then from that point on, you've got normal increases. But Correct. If you're looking at the impact to a average person, and again, the average house price in town right now is almost $900,000. So they're going to go from $13,000 in the current year to what Brian projects to be $19,000 in fiscal year 30. So it's a significant increase cumulatively over that period of time of construction, and then it stays up. So the slope is pretty sharp, and then it's going to level off as far as tax, unless we do something else. But the library addition is in here, Marguerite, if you're listening. Yep. And that's why if you go down and can everybody see my cursor?
Yep.
Okay, so if you look at the debt and interest line, the reason it jumps from this year to this year, that's where the library's coming in. So we have factored in adding an addition to the library onto this because it's something that is contemplated. Library is popular, so we have not excluded the library from this computation to show that this is the impact of doing both the new school and the library addition.
So this is new school, library plus level service and capital plan?
Yes, basically, yes.
Yeah. And as Jason Malinowski is also chair of the CIPC, the Capital Investment Planning Committee. That number, it's a plan, and that will be tinkered with every year. So this is what we know for now. Over time, maybe there's some changes to those, but we tend to shove things in the future. So we're always shoving, not going the other way. So I'm not sure where that ends up. This is what the plan says right now. So that's what we've used. So that's and then the debt service down here, if you watch my cursor. So it's basically going to be $5 million a year just for a new 4-grade school. So that is a standalone debt service for the new school. All right, so Brian, I'm going to go down to the next one now.
Kathy, sure. Jason has his hand up if you want to call.
Jason?
Just one comment on that capital piece. Capital was not consulted on these numbers. I realize it's what the plan has, but what this is assuming is that we as a town are going to spend twice as much on capital appropriation than we have in any of the last 6 years. I think we need to be eyes wide open that one, capital should have been consulted on what numbers are going to be used here, and two, that even with consultation, this is assuming doubling the spend on capital outside of the Neary project. I think for purposes of projections to the committee, I would recommend that you pull this back a little bit. It's just not realistic unless we are going to completely change what we do as a town related to capital. It's not to diminish anything that's out there, because I was used to like the libraries and the debt number. So I think we should consider that, Kathy. I realize it's not 100% part of this discussion, but you probably have $1 million to $500,000 to $1 million of potential inflation in here that is outside of our normal trend. I get it's conservative. The other thing I'll just ask is on the FY26 recap, which is next year, we're actually going to bond and start paying principal. If we did this project, we're not even going to have a shovel in the ground. Like, are you off a year with these numbers, or are we not doing any sort of temporary notes? I realize you're going to escalate at some point. We're still going to see this 13% at some point, but I was shocked to see this being shown so early, regardless of what project goes forward. Those are my 2 comments.
So, Brian, let me do the first one, then you can talk about the start date. Remember, the 950 though is out there already, Jason, but of course 523 is not 950. So we would have been happy to use different numbers for capital. You knew what we were doing. So if you guys had looked at this, we would have done different numbers. And of course, this is easy to change. So if capital wants to meet and revise.
We can't before Monday, but I think we can.
No, we can do it arbitrarily. If you say, look, take 500 out of each one of those, we can do that. So if you want,
I'll think about it and send you a note.
All right, but we certainly have time down the road to change this before we go through this again. When we get, we've got a lot of time between now and town meeting to truly fine tune these numbers, which we can do there. So, Brian, do you want to speak to when they actually started issuing the debt?
Yeah, it actually is some temporary notes mixed in there, because I'm looking at you can't see what I'm looking at, but I'm looking at the amortization schedule now, and it starts off fairly like, especially in 27 is when it really ramps up, but 26 is a piece, and you're right, it may be pushed, some of that may be pushed off till the next year. That first year is a little dicey.
I think we told them, Jason, that the construction would start April of 26. That's what we gave.
We did. Yes. So that could be pushed. You're right. That may be pushed a bit another year. Some of that money could definitely be pushed a year. You're right. And that's common in these projects.
Right. Thank you.
All right, Chelsea iPhone has raised her hand. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you know, as part of the capital plan, what aspects of each school were taken into consideration on that? So did you take out everything that was related to Neary?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so school committee actually voted Monday night to revise our capital plan. So I just want to make sure we're in sync, based, obviously these are moving targets. So I just want to make sure we're in sync with whatever we updated on Monday, and I can send that over to you, Brian, or I'm sure Becky can.
Okay, that's good. And yeah, you know, I know Kathy and Jason sort of stole this issue, but I was actually going to also mention that we're actually have the capital plan out there right now to department heads to revise for the next 10 years. So
yeah.
Really want to stress that this is right now, and it is going to change. And before town meeting, obviously in the spring, this is going to be all fresh numbers. So I have a feeling, like Jason mentioned, that it'll be down, not up. So this is probably
Right.
worst case. I just want to stress that.
Okay. And I think depending on what decisions are made are also going to drive specific needs from a capital perspective for each school. So I think we just need to be clear on what scenario we're talking about to drive these numbers. Because obviously if we go with a 2-grade school, then Finn could have a higher, well, will have a higher capital plan than if we were to go with a 4-grade school.
So Chelsea, when the school committee puts together its capital plan and they are looking at things that qualify for the accelerated repair program in the MSBA, do they show the number net of what to expect, or do they show it gross?
So right now and Becky can probably speak to this better than I can. So Becky, feel free to chime in. But right now we've actually in our capital plan have taken out what we would do to Neary if we weren't in MSBA. So we have the 2 scenarios for 2-grade versus 4-grade. Yeah. But for Finn, we do not have updated numbers on what a base repair would require in 10 to 15 years through MSBA. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think we're gonna need that, because look at so let's assume we go 2-grade, right? So that means Finn stays open, and so you definitely need to incorporate Finn into the capital plan, correct?
Yes, and I think Jason and Becky can probably speak better to that than I can. But yep. Yes, I agree with you. But that's not in there today.
And the only reason I'm bringing up the accelerated repair program, Becky, I'm sure you know this, but it looks like last year when the legislature made all these changes, they moved out of the 1.2 billion cap on the MSBA funding each year, the accelerated repair program completely. So it's kind of uncapped. So there may be, more money in that than there used to be. So I would definitely factor in the reimbursement in your capital plan, the expected reimbursement, because it looks like it'd be 40%. Then second, if we decide to go 4-grade and therefore close Finn, and we'll talk about this in a minute, I still think the Neary Building Committee has got to, in their minds, think about what happens to Finn. You just can't isolate the 4-grade without Finn. And therefore, there's a cost of that. And so therefore, you're going to compare the cost of what to do with a closed Finn to the cost of how to repair Finn to keep it open. So yes, both numbers are very relevant to, I think, the final decision.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Denise?
One of the things that I would like to point out is I think it's important for, when we present at this meeting, I think it's important to show what the school is doing to this budget, because I think they need to understand voters have the ability at town meeting, at the ballot box, to decide on what projects they're going to go forward with. And I think they need an understanding of how this project is going to, impact the fiscal year versus something down the line. I understand these are projections, but right now, Neary is a reality in that we are trying to plan against the tax rate. So I would feel more comfortable if we be able to at least call out those numbers to show what they are.
So Denise, remember, we're talking about two separate votes. Monday night, the 7 members of the NBC vote on B4, C1, C4, or nothing, right? That's our vote.
Correct, Kathy.
This is one person. I didn't think that what you just said was necessarily relevant to that vote. I thought what was more important is to show the relative distance between the cost of these projects. Then, though, when we get to town meeting, what you just said, I think is important that people do understand the isolated impact of this project. So they really understand that if you did nothing and you kept whatever we would do then at that point, close Neary and expand, Finn, whatever we do, this is what the cost of that project is to your taxes. So I agree that the incremental cost of this project is important at town meeting. I didn't think it was as important Monday night, but if you disagree, then I got some work to do this weekend.
I guess what I'm saying is if you're presenting this on Monday night, this implication to the taxes, what I'm saying is that people are going to perceive this and it's going to be implanted in their minds and they're going to say, oh, look at what's happening to our budget. That's all I was saying. I assumed you were going to use this calculation on Monday night.
We did intend to use what you're looking at right now. So Brian's about to show you the other computation. So this is truly the basis of the presentation for Monday night, if that's what you just said, yes. Mm-hmm. So are you saying you want me to do something, want us to do something different for Monday night? Or
I'm just concerned about what people will perceive when they see this. Are they going to perceive that this is, this is, yes, the town budget, and this is projections through, the next 5-6 years. But how is the impact specifically, which is our job, to show the town what the impact is for what we're proposing to do? Because this is reality. This is going to come to town meeting. Some of the other projections may or may not.
We have that done. Communications, we have that done, so we can show that too, as far as the isolated impact of this project.
I think that's important.
Brian, you could isolate of say the 967 and the 554 percentage, what the debt service for the school is of that, right?
Oh yeah. We've already done this. Jason's got a matrix that they used for the recent communication. So it's done.
Okay.
See, in my mind, and I'm just one person, I'm more concerned about my total tax versus how I got there.
Denise, but I think to Denise's point, if we're showing this,
she's saying the opposite. I'm more concerned about what this one project is doing to my taxes than my overall taxes. So we'll show it both ways.
Yeah, but I think it'd be good to know. Okay, of the $1,400 increase that year, $1,200 of that is the school, $1,000 of that is the school, right? And the rest of it is general budget and capital and et cetera.
Okay. I'm just pushing because I'm afraid that people will see that and then in their mind assimilate the fact that this is what it's going to cost because we're putting the school up. So I just want to make sure we segregate it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. I'll do something real quick for you, Denise. So take a look at the third year to the fourth year. So you see online, the next house line, you see we're going to spend $6 million more from year to year, right? Well, $4 million of that's going to be the school. So 2/3 of that increase is a school. So this is easy to do to make it make sense. And we can do that.
Thank you.
All right. So Brian, let's go on down to the next one, which is 2-grade school.
65 million. So it's really the same concept. We didn't change, obviously, the budget numbers or the capital numbers because obviously either of these scenarios did stay the same. So the only difference is at the bottom, of course, with that 65 million under the yellow there is your new lesser amortization payments that would be required to make. And everything else, again, is same concept. You can see on the right already, if you remember up top, that it's now 8.5. That's a bit lower than we had. Again, obviously, it would drop down quite a bit.
917 to 8.5.
Yeah. So it's
1303 to 12.76.
Yeah.
917 down to 8.43. So yeah, it's a little bit less, but it's not a lot less.
right. So in some cases, usually a lot of the cases, it's not even a percent, probably 0.75%. So, but it did drop down, and you know, it's still a difference of $20 million. So, yeah.
And the debt service is 3.7 versus almost 5, and that's $1.3 million. You say, well, that's a lot of money. Well, it's not that big a percentage of $83 million. So I can tell you, of everything I've done so far, I'm shocked by this. I thought there would be a material difference between the two scenarios, between the 2 grade and the 4 grade. I'm not sure people are going to quit. Anybody would say that 8.57 and 9.17 are materially different. So I'm shocked at how little the difference looks to at least me. I'm not sure what everybody else thinks, but this is what I just said. You need to really, this is what everybody needs to digest over the weekend, is the difference in the two scenarios as far as what the projected impact is on taxes. So Denise, I think what I just said, maybe the most important thing that gets said today is there's not a huge increase in taxes between the two scenarios. Andrew?
Brian, do your numbers take into any consideration of future debt being at a higher rating, a lower rating, higher interest rate?
No, we didn't get that granular, but okay. No.
Because, do you have any idea of kind of level of impact that may, put us under? Like if we went up, 75 bips in our rates going on all debt issuances going forward after the project.
I don't think it'll be that much. Okay. And again, I don't know the dollar amount, but I tend to hear from people who do this for a living that it's more like 20 basis points or something like that on that level. It's not 75 basis points or 0.5%. It's a lot less. It would, but again, on $80 million, that is some money.
So, well, it would be after the fact, right? So it would be after we would get it approved, right?
In other words, our rating goes down because of this debt, but we still get this issued at our AAA rating, right? That's what we think. Right. Hopefully the library's out the door at that point.
Well, that would be an interesting question. I think maybe with the auditor or bond advisor is, if we're doing this in tranches, at what point in time is this debt going to become a problem for our rating or for our interest rate?
Well, the other thing too is we have no idea what interest rates are going to do. If we did, we wouldn't be sitting here. Yeah. So, you might say, look, back to Mark's question, the rate of increase might really slow down. I agree with Larry. I don't think the costs go down. I just think the rate of increase could change. It certainly already has as far as overall inflation. And so that could help us. We could be doing this at a pretty sweet time, maybe. And maybe interest rates are going to have started tamping down by that point. But we don't know that. So they've used current market rates, I think. I don't think they've tried to project rates, have they, Brian?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, they haven't.
So anybody have any questions on the relative difference in projected impact on the town budget for the next 5 years between debt of 65 million and debt of 86 million?
Yeah, I think I'm still concerned that the site costs for the 305 aren't correct. And I think that could be a few $1 million.
Yeah.
And I think, until we get that, that helps, that widens the gap between the two.
Yeah. So Larry and Katie, what we're asking, and Jim, what we're asking you to do is, as soon as it can be done, is truly scrub those site costs again, especially on the 305 side, to make sure that what's there makes sense, given that one school is twice as big as the other.
Okay, well, we will try to get that for Monday evening, and see if we can update that. I'm not sure, Kathy, if there's a particular time you need that to then feed into these calculations. Then we're sort of probably talking about midday Monday at the latest on your side or on our side.
Well, we're also starting early on Monday. So Brian's teed up for doing this. It takes he's got to give the bond consulting firm new numbers first. They've got to do their thing. But they've already been advised that they may be asking new numbers, so hopefully they're teed up. Then they've got to get back to him with new debt service, and he's got to feed it in. But this can all be done pretty fast because it's all set up, ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously once we get that number, we have to feed it into the MSBA 3011 budget because all these things do adjust all those values. But again, we're teed up for that as well. So
okay. So now the only other thing that I wanted to discuss before we adjourn is the incentive points. And Jim and I've had a lot of good discussions about this. Let's just say sometimes you respectfully disagree. So Jim, out of due respect to what you've done here, I'm happy for you to do it both ways. And we'll show it both ways to the committee on Monday. But I do want you to use 5 incentive points for both C1 and C4, which is a combination of 2 for the capital planning process, because I've got great faith that we will get there. And then the full 3 for the green. Because remember, there is no 2. It's either 0. I'm gonna do this right. 0.
Yep. 0, 3, or 4.
4.
Yep.
Right? So I said use 3. I'm not saying use 4. Use 3 because 2 is not a possibility. So use 3 for the green, and you and I agree to this. It's those are 3 possibilities. Use 3 for the green and 2 for capital. So use 5 when we rerun this as far as C1 and C4.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do those 2 scenarios. We also had some spirited discussions internally about this exact topic as well. So,
spirited as yours and mine.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, we can run those 2 scenarios. So just to be clear, we want to run to input 3 in the green schools and run with that number.
Yep.
Correct. So we're just talking about the one scenario, increasing it from 2 to 3. Yep. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Yep.
Okay. So but 5 in total, so 2 plus 3. And then you're going to scrub the site cost, especially for the 305, to just make sure that it makes sense, given it doesn't look right.
Yep. Understood.
All right. And then we'll take it from there.
Kathy, I just looked up just for you, so you know, the Hopkinton one, they did 5.65. So they did 4 for energy efficiency and 1.65 for maintenance. So I guess maintenance isn't a 1 or a 2. There's some kind of scale there.
Oh, I think there's a scale, but I just got great faith in our CIPC that they'll get us to 2. All right.
So I think that's fine. I think it's conservative compared to other schools.
Mark, are you okay with those requests?
Yes.
Okay. So Mark,
and Kathy, you're saying that we're just doing this for the C1 and C4 schemes, right? The additional green school incentives.
Do the same. Well, the side cost, if you're talking about
site cost is site cost, I understand that.
So yeah, the only thing to do on B4 is change. Go ahead and use the enhanced reimbursement rate on that one too.
For the Reno side. What I was getting to was
that you're gonna add the 2 points to that one too, Larry, for the green and for the capital plan.
Okay, let me see if I understand. We're adding 2 green points for Ad Reno. We're adding 3 green points for C1 and C4 as new build.
You're adding 2 to each one of them. 1 for the capital and 1 for the green. For all 3 of them.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Jim,
I'm doing it. I'm doing it as we speak.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. And Jim, how does it work with the indoor air quality versus the green. Is the green up to the 4? And then the indoor air quality is an additional 1?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, because see, a lot of schools will do a 3 for environmental, 1 for indoor air quality, and then, usually between 1 and 2 for the maintenance.
Yep.
Yeah, the green is essentially a 3+1.
Yep.
Okay. So do you think that we're actually going to be at 4? Not the full green at 4, but at 3 out of the 4, and then the 1 for the indoor air quality. So we should be looking at.
Overall, my goal would be to get you to 4, but I
Okay.
would say for the planning purposes, carrying 3 should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and as Kathy, I have discussed, that's kind of the thought process was if we get into schematic design and we have to VE something out and that affects those points, that at least gives us a little bit of a buffer. So,
Okay.
yep. So I just went across the board with all the 3011. So I have 2 for maintenance and 3 for green schools. So I can update our slide and some of our other projections. So.
Great, thanks.
Now, one other, I guess, alternative, the C4, as far as everything that's been done that we've shown today, does not include the geothermal system. You agree, Jim?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And so that's still on the table. It's, and then, you've got to work to do to see what you could get back from the federal government as far as the Inflation Protection Act, which it absolutely includes a lot of stuff. But that's still on the table. We haven't taken that off the table, but it's just not part of these numbers right now.
Correct. Yeah, we're keeping it as an ad alternate for the time being, and then we can make a decision after we choose the option if it fits within the budget. Was the project team's thought process.
Denise?
I just realized Denise is stuck over on the attendees. Let me promote her.
There we go. So my question is on the ad reno, are we sure, and I don't think we can be sure of unexpected costs. This is an older building. So do you think a contingency can be established in case we haven't figured anything out? I mean, when you start, renovating an old building, that there are hidden things is my question.
Hey, Jim, you doubled the construction contingency for the ad runner, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. And the new options we're carrying 2.5 for construction contingency, and then on the reno we're carrying 5.
So you think that's enough?
Based on historical data. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's just under 4.5 million for the reno, and then for the new same enrollment, we are carrying. Just make sure I'm looking at the right option. C4, we're carrying just about 2.2 million. So
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Denise, to me, the big takeaway with the ad reno is they're projecting the cost to be the same as a brand new building.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to influence you unduly here, but to me, that is what you got to keep in mind. Why would you take the risk of renovating when you can have a brand new building without that risk? For the
100%. I agree.
So anyway, okay. That's the financial presentation that this committee intends to make with the revisions we talked about Monday at 5 o'clock. So, here's your chance to add something to it, question us, anything else. So, raise your hand if anybody else needs to add something here. I don't see any hands raised. So, Mark and Andrew, are you happy with where we are at this point?
Yeah, once we get the site adjustments and we get the rate, I think we'll be in a good place.
Is there anything else you want to talk about today?
I think that's good. I think that's enough.
Yeah, I think we talked about a lot. Okay. I mean, this to me was such an important meeting. Of all the meetings I've ever done, this was kind of at the top of my list. Okay, Brian, thank you for reacting as always so quickly. We should definitely thank our bond consulting firm too. So any other business properly brought before this committee?
Larry's got his hand raised.
Sorry, I was just noting, Kathy, you mentioned 5 o'clock, and I think the meeting invitation says 6.
Well, I was in Tennessee when it came out, so it may have did it.
You got a different time change.
So I just thought that I knew he said 6, but I thought, well, maybe he moved it up another hour. Okay, so good. That gives us another hour, Brian, on Monday. And I'm glad you said that because I would have been zooming on it.
Yeah, didn't want you hanging around the public safety building looking for something to do.
Yeah, and everybody remember it is in person, so we're going to our great public safety building. Okay, so no business, no public comment. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, but I just want to make a note, since I've been supplying all the donuts to these meetings, I think Jim Burrows should bring donuts to Monday night's meeting.
I'm totally comfortable with that task.
Okay.
That's what we need at 6 o'clock on the evening. It's donuts, right? Okay, so we fall asleep. All right, Jim, whatever. All right, so we've had a motion to adjourn in a second. Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Cook is aye. So thank you, everybody.
And I don't think any other quorums are still here. So.
Oh, that's true. They're all gone.
Do we still have Neary? We have
I'm still going to
us.
adjourn the select board meeting at.
Oh yeah, and then Denise, you need to just adjourn the Neary one.
Sure. Is Jason off?
Yeah, he's gone.
Oh, okay. So I would look for a motion to adjourn Neary Building Committee.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Moved and second. All in favor? Mark?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And I'm aye. I got everybody, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
thanks, everybody.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.